Aloha, friends. Haven't seen you for a week or two, maybe a little longer. I hope you all been able to just stay in your space and not be flying around half the world. I was younger once and able to do 100,000 miles a year for longer than I'd like to think. I can't do that anymore. But for those of you who have been to the jungle, the Thai jungle lake, I did a 7-day safari with friends. No retreat, just hanging out with a family of 7 elephants and going to parts of the lake that we had never been to before, with kayaks and stand-up paddleboards, and seeing everything that makes it so special there. The great hornbills, the gibbons, our smallest little primate cousins, and the remarkable elephants that if you just don't show any aggression or even the slightest assertiveness and just let the lake drift you closer to them, then they stop flapping their ears and they become calm and they don't feel anxious and they just let us up close. It took 17 years for this to happen. It was a relationship that we could hear them, they would be all around us or close by, but we never saw them for like 15 years. And then 2 or 3 years ago, they said, all right, we'll let you in our backyard if you behave. And in the last 2 years, they've had 4 babies. And this family had 3 babies that we hung out with for a few days. That was worth the grind of the travel, at least flying in that direction. I have a real difficult time flying against the sun. When I fly back from west to east, it feels like my body slams into a wall. So I'm having tea, so I will keep you awake during the meditation by keeping me awake. And thanks to Kay, and we have Jake joining us today, offering some Dhamma at the end of our meditation. And if you haven't already, check out your friends here from around the world, east, west, north, and south. And then through your senses, just realize your sense of place. where you are visually and auditorily, through all the senses, aware of the light and sound vibration, any fragrance or flavor. And we're lucky to have such amazing body sensitivity, the largest organ. It's a lot of landscape to settle into, and a lot of elemental experience to feel. The textures, movement, pressure, vibration, temperature range. The body awareness is that initial symphony of awareness, the elemental dance follows its form. Always different. Wherever we looked a moment ago, if we return to it, it's already different. That patch of pressure might now be tingling or numb or vibrating or heat, cool. And sometimes when you find a particular poignant place of sensation, like coolness, just out of curiosity, see if you can find a place in the body of warmth. Or you feel vibration in one place? Can you feel pressure in another area of the body? And if you notice in the expansion in a certain way with the in-breath at the abdomen or chest, notice in the next breath if you can feel that little stream that often runs in the midst of that in-breath, a sensation stream. Sometimes it's like a staccato or running up steps, or sometimes it's like a silk thread in the hanging from a limb in the breeze. So it's always different how these sensations play out. And it's not just rising, falling. It's not just expansion, contraction. It's not just pressure propelling itself out and then sinking again. There's just so much going on. And whether we have a wide lens or a narrow, focused attention, it doesn't matter, and it just increases the discovery and the range of our attention in either microscopic or wide lens angle awareness. And at any time we check the awareness itself, we check the mind, the attitude. Is it driven or relaxed? Do we have an agenda of getting somewhere, getting calm, getting some samadhi? Or are we just settling into each moment as it is, trusting the process the intelligence of this inner Dhamma quality that knows how to evolve the heart and mental processes, knows how to grow them. And so you just notice whether you feel settled or unsettled and not try to do anything about it. You notice if there's any strong emotions that are up and what they are, what they feel like, and what is the attitude toward the emotion. Rejecting, clinging, don't want it to stay or want it to go. And turning awareness in on itself. You start to see what Sayadaw U Pandita would call early mindfulness. It's the purest kind of mindfulness, born out of equanimity. It seems to proceed everything like the bow of a boat or the front of your stand-up paddleboard. Is it sort of gently slices through the water? So too, this early mindfulness is leading the way in feeling the body, the breath, the sensations, mental states, and emotions. And as we start to discover that this Dhamma current, and it picks up the practice and carries the practice without any interference of our own intention, without any desire to control or force or produce calm and concentration, produce equanimity. We understand the concepts, we understand what these states are. We've experienced them, we hear them described in words, in the texts we read or the talks we hear. And however that settles in our system, it's helpful. But now as we practice to engage that doing nothing with full commitment, is like a reciprocal gift. Reciprocal because the gift of the Dhamma is already there. And the reciprocity is our trust of that. That aspect of Dhamma that is confidence, courage, that lets the current pick up the practice and carry it along. And recognize our wishes, our desires, our agendas, not do anything about them. Whatever has a nature of arising has a nature to fall away again. There's nothing we have to do to precipitate that. We just lean back in the present moment and observe how this fantastic, multifaceted system of our body, mind, and senses carries on. And when we add to it this Dhamma awareness, and especially this early mindfulness, it makes it all the more fascinating, beyond imagination. And no matter how many months, years, decades we've been practicing, it's such an incredible discovery that it keeps rolling along in always fascinating ways. And if we think it's humdrum and same old stuff and boring, that's present time thought habits arising. And we have only to recognize that critical thinking, our judging mind is up again. So it seems it's never quite the same. It's never the same negative patterns or clinging patterns, or never the same emotion. Fear in this moment isn't fear in the next moment. Joy in this moment isn't the same joy in the next. And that's why we get this feedback, this reciprocity, this charge of newness, of gladness and joy, and increased levels of subtle happiness that are the propelling forces of the current, of the Dhamma current. When it's helpful, you feel a little stuck or you need a little energy, if your eyes are closed, open them for a while. Or investigate the ear door, see if there's any prevalent or subtle sound vibrations, external or internal. All sound is experienced in the body, not out there. But conceptual sounds can arise from within our system, and not from the vibrations that enter through the ear door. So another interesting phenomena to know. Appreciate when you feel, after some time of observing the body and a touch point like the hands or the sit bones, or after some time of noticing the breathing process, the sensations within the expansion, contraction, within the rise and fall. How the whole mind-body system kind of drops in little stages, drops into a calming place, a calming field. The elements are subtle: air, temperature, texture, temperature. And then again, that's a sense maybe of dropping to another level of calm. And if it isn't calm, we feel in the body, if there's stuff going on in the body, we can feel calm settling the mind, heart, in a non-reactive response to whatever's going on in the body. If there's intense pressure or vibration, heat, numbness, pinpricks, But that just carries on. It's the nature of the body in the moment. The mind doesn't have to be reactive. It can continue to settle in the midst of the storms of the body, the changing weather patterns of the body, the turbulent systems of the mind and body. Even with strong emotion, there's still a part of the heart, mind, that is the awareness that's not affected. It's anchored in stability. Not reactive, not needing anything to change with those emotions, with those mental states. So no matter what the turbulent systems are, physically, mentally, emotionally, we take refuge in that Dhamma energy and awareness, calm, focus, equanimity. They are worthy of refuge. They are worthy to put our trust into these Dhamma qualities. Please see for yourself.
few weeks ago, um, I too was traveling. Really, the second trip that we've been on as a family in, since COVID, and it was really a special trip. So my wife and my daughter and my son and I, and actually some family friends, we all went down to an island that's in the Caribbean, from Massachusetts here, where we are. And there can be some really good surf down there. And so my son was very much looking forward to the surfing. He's 13 now. And we really got lucky. People said, "Did you come for this swell? Or was it just by chance?" No, this was just the kids' break. we didn't plan this. The first week when we were at this one break, I could see, the waves would come, and my son Keen would almost take off, and he'd almost take off. And my friend and I watching him were like, "Oh, we've been there." It comes up, and there's that moment, maybe not, that moment of fear. And by the end of the second week, he was just really confident, at home with that wave and at home with the crowds there. And it made me think of when I was that age. Mostly I was kayaking, doing whitewater kayaking, first with my father and friends, and then Steve joined the crowd, and we would, in New England and Massachusetts, paddle whitewater rivers. And one thing that's really distinct for me is, when I was 9 and 10 and 11, how huge the waves on these sections of whitewater were. Just massive. And the waves of fear inside me as I would go down these rapids. And then a few years later, the very same rivers, those waves were so much smaller. I don't know what happened. Except for that I got more confident, at ease. I could play in one wave above and know that the next rapid was right there, because there was that confidence and ease. So I was thinking of that with my son, Kian. The first week, my wife and daughter were there, and so we were surfing maybe just an hour or two a day. And so he got a chance to kind of acclimatize, get used to, get comfortable with this break. And then the second week, they had to go back for my daughter's school, and it was just my son and I. So we really had a beautiful time, just the two of us. And he wanted to get up. It was his break, but he wanted to get up at 5:30. So we'd wake up in the dark and do our morning routine. I'd get a little tea. We'd head out to the surf break, paddle out. About 10 a.m., I would be exhausted. So I would go in and I'd get him to reapply sunscreen. I had a little bit in my surf shorts, reapply the sunscreen, get him to do it. And then I'd paddle in and I'd watch him for another hour sitting in the shade. He's still going. It was great. So we do about 4 hours in the morning, and then come in, get breakfast, and watch a movie to stay out of the sun in the midday, and then get some late lunch and head back out around 4:30 and surf till dark every day for 6 days. It was amazing. It was really beautiful. So both the waves, my son becoming more comfortable, and by the end, just that ease with the waves and with the particular crowd of people that was there. And then also on the way back, we started the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movies, just thinking about the dragons and facing the dragons. So I've been thinking a lot about fear and facing fear. Waves of water, kayaking in the whitewater that I grew up paddling with Steve and my dad and others. Those waves that got smaller as I got bigger somehow, and my son. And then also waves of emotion, internal, myself, waves of emotion coming at me from outside. Just thinking a lot about this navigating in the face of fear, as that feeling of being seized and the overwhelm, the tightness in the throat and chest. And a lot of what happens for me internally, especially facing my own internal waves of emotion or waves of emotion from outside, the thinking mind will just start spinning, trying to figure it out and figure out a way out. Even with the low level anxiety of, what am I going to talk about? That constant spinning. The buzzy energy in the body, buzzy energy in the mind. The urgency. But I've also been thinking about the way that those waves got smaller. And how sometimes the same waves of emotion internally or same waves of emotion from outside can be coming at me. And there's this greater ease and confidence. Not that it's not painful. Not even that it's no longer scary, but just a settledness. You can feel this equanimity in the body as a rootedness, like a mountain or an old tree, rooted in the face of all kinds of weather, fire, rain, ice, and wind, storm, sunshine. And sometimes for me, when there's enough of that rooted energy holding me, there can even be a kind of kindness. That's held by that, grown in that. Sometimes for myself, sometimes for another, even in the face of anger or fear from outside. And I've just been appreciating that. Really grateful that sometimes that happens. I'm really grateful that sometimes that happens. There's an analogy that Michelle sometimes gives of mindfulness, like a butterfly, just landing on the flower and then off it goes. It's very difficult for me to make equanimity happen. Even with mindfulness, there are all these on-ramps. Stephen was speaking about the quality of doing nothing with full commitment, which has this powerful flavor of equanimity, that groundedness, not trying to fix anything. It's not trying to change fear into courage. It's just not doing anything, just allowing fear to make itself known just as it is. Washing over us and falling away. And there's so many on-ramps or ways to invite in the conditions so that this quality of doing nothing with full commitment can start to take hold. Using an anchor in the way that Stephen was speaking about, to tune into the precise details of the body, breath, emotion. And in that way, we're developing both the energizing qualities, the precise, energetic, joyous knowing, and also the calm, collected, even aspects of awareness. We're inviting in these qualities that allow the practice to happen of its own accord, that allow there to be doing nothing with full commitment. But for me, they certainly don't line up like that all the time. So the quality of mindfulness, like the butterfly, just landing when it does, and off it goes again. I've really appreciated that from Michelle. The lightness of just really appreciating when mindfulness shows up or equanimity shows up, and with that lightness, not creating anxiety when it's not, the conditions aren't like that. There's so much of the idea of meditating that I notice in myself and also in people I have worked with. There's so much of that idea of meditating just makes us anxious. Like, it's not happening now. What I thought was supposed to be happening is not happening now. So just appreciating, grateful in the moments when the factors do come together, so that the old fears, the waves appear. And there's this groundedness in the face of that, and ease to rest in. So I've really been appreciating that when it shows up. Knowing that it took a lot of work to cultivate those conditions that allowed that to happen, but also the grace, unknowable, that allowed it to happen just then, in the moment I needed it, in the face of challenges from inside or outside. and Steve knows this, but I've often found in interpersonal interactions that I'm drawing, of course, on the practice that I learned with Steve and with Michelle and Upandita of this moment-to-moment, precise moment-to-moment mindfulness. I'm drawing on the qualities that were cultivated in the on levels of understanding of experience falling away. But actually, in the moment, what I found really helpful is in difficult interpersonal moments is just calling on these Brahma Viharas in particular, these divine abidings of a heart that's friendly and caring and gladdened and even. And just really resting in that intention, really resting in that intention of kindness, held in that ground of equanimity. Just finding the touchstone in this moment with this person. How can I show up with a grounded kindness, authentically myself? An evenness and equanimity that allows me to be true to what's true for me, but also with that care, sweetness of care for another's pain. Just trying to source from there has been really transformative for me in the face of fear, and learning to do that with more confidence, like my son at that surf break over the days and weeks. Not that the waves don't keep coming, just that he's more confident and ease as they come through. There's this quality of courage, virya, from the root of vir, hero. And our teacher Upandita loved to talk about 3 stages of virya. The setting out energy, aramba dhatu, and then the quality that carries forward, perseveres. So there's this initiating energy that gets us going, and then the real perseverance through the grind. And then as it starts, we gain that confidence, we gain that ease, as there starts to be more facility, like my son with the waves. In this case, I'm thinking of the inner and outer waves of emotion and ways of the world. And then as we gain that facility, still the energy, the courage that's required to carry us through towards our goal. I've really been appreciating that too, that description of the initial breaking out energy, courage, and then that force of heart that's necessary to push through difficulty. And then even as it becomes easier, as the facility is gained, the energy we have to keep calling up to continue towards our goal. sometimes there can be a real joy. Spoke about the appreciation of mindfulness landing like a butterfly. Sometimes there can be a real joy and ease and equanimity that's cultivated when we can notice the different aspects of fear in the body and mind with that precision. So noticing, I was speaking earlier about that tensing up and the, fear in my throat, the buzzy energy in the body and the buzzy energy in the mind, constantly searching for a way, some way to fix it, to make sense of it. But sometimes when I can notice that from moment to moment, just in feeling that buzzy energy, noticing the mind go off again and again, already there's that sublime kind of noticing of the washing over, falling away, washing over, falling away of this moment of tension, this moment of trying to figure it out and fall back into that ease, equanimity, groundedness for a moment before I erupt again into figuring it out, trying to figure it out. In one of these rounds of trying to call up courage, I heard somebody say, courage is what comes after. And that really helped me. It's not that I needed, because I kept waiting. I kept waiting for courage to come, but that wasn't working for me. It was really more like that initiating energy had to happen. And I had to be in the grind of my worst fears. Everything coming at me, kind of dancing with dragons, dodging the fire. And then somehow keeping on doing that and just trying to be as kind and caring as I could in that. I feel like somehow the confidence came along. Not fully, I don't mean that, just enough to keep going. So I was really appreciating that idea of courage is what happens after. Just I had to break free first. And these waves of internal and external emotion. So I think that's it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about courage and equanimity, fear, and confidence. And just appreciate the moments when the hard work of moment to moment mindfulness or the hard work of cultivating the Brahma Viharas just manifests in a moment of grace of, oh, wow, I can show up for this. Check that out. Steve likes to tell a story. I wasn't there, but I hope it's okay if I tell the story. In the room that Steve is sitting in, friend Reps, who Steve can tell you about, practicing for decades and decades and decades. Turned to Stephen, doing some sitting practice. Turned to Stephen, this stuff really works. I love that. So I've been appreciating that. This stuff really works. Thank you. I'd like to take any questions. If there's any way that Stephen or I can be of service to your practice, about the talk or the beautiful instructions, settling us in, please. How can we help? You guys have it all set, perfectly clear. Hey, son. Good to see you. Oh, do I have to unmute? Okay.
I still don't get what you said with courage will come after work. Usually we have to have courage to do something.
Yeah. It really spoke to me in the moment when that person said it. I think the reason it spoke to me is, so thinking of like one particular time in my life, just an interpersonal difficulty, you know, really stuck in a tangle in a relationship, and I kept waiting for the courage to come, or maybe the understanding of what to do. I just feel like that part never came. I just had to, I had to do something, and then maybe it would be more accurate to say the confidence came after. I definitely did not have confidence before acting decisively. How about that? The confidence came after. And then, yeah, that's where I was really liking the Arambadhatu, Nikamadhatu, Parikamadhatu, the 3 stages of courage, or 3 stages of effort, 3 stages of energy. This initial setting out, and then the slog, like persevering through the really difficult stuff. And then you gain some facility, like, but you still have to keep going. You still have to keep going. Maybe confidence. What the person said was courage comes after, but maybe confidence comes after would be better. Does that make sense now?
Yeah, I can see that once you went through the task first, and you know what it takes, then you would get the courage for the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the courage will come, confidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now then yeah, makes
Okay, good. Me too. I understand better now too.
sense. Okay. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Molly. Please.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just so touched to see both you and Stephen here and to have this opportunity again to interact with the Sangha. It was just an amazing experience to be led by the Sangha for as often as I could tune in on the Sundays. And I just wanted to speak my gratitude out loud for how beautifully it feels like it's all held together, and to get the different voices and just to hear the beautiful way that all the people I sit with are able to guide, very, very minimally, and feeling that connection. So, thank you everybody for that. And I'm like, I'm back and forth. Am I going to say this, what I'm going to say? Because I've been in this couple of years of milking the opportunity to do these online sanghas and retreats, and this unique integration of being in my space and deciding how to walk out the door and into my car with all this fresh dharma. So it's this sort of like, okay, a lot of retreatness that normally I would have to fly away for, fly back, get all jumbled. And then, you just know you got to go back to life. And now, after 2 years of having this homogenization and this very different way of getting to take some deep dives and go right out into life, now there's this new thing just in the last couple of weeks for me, and maybe for others, of like, okay, the masks are off, the hugs are back, my choir's singing again, and a friend that normally wouldn't have had a birthday party. So it's like, I'm saying yes, 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 because of course, God, but the coming home after that kind of agitation night after night, beautiful stimulant. It's like, I obviously know that I've overstimulated myself, but I don't really even know how to kind of come back into it all. So I'm sure I will. It'll all be fine. But I would love, if you're picking up on something that you can soothe, I'd take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question about, and maybe could have been addressed more in the talk, but about how to navigate in that overwhelm. Yeah. Steve, do you have thoughts? Can follow.
What are you doing when you feel that overwhelm, Molly? I
Come
can't
on,
hear you.
unmute it. There we go. Well, some of it is super fresh. Like last night, I was 4 nights in a row that I was out in different amounts of socializing. And last night was intense. It was this big fundraiser for Hawaii Islands Land Trust. And I was volunteering at this table, and it was this huge schmooze. So what I'm doing is showing up here, that's like, this is, and noticing, being as kind as I can be to all the different aspects of noticing the thickening of ego, that had been carefully and gently sort of stroked into different thinness, come back in. And anyway, I'm just in process, and the process is fine.
Do you go to your body?
Pardon me?
Do you go to the body?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And what happens when you do?
There is kind of a toxic ick. The peaceful heart, the hum, the clarity, that's been so lovely is not there most of the time. And yet there's awareness, and there's this sort of dialogue interaction of like, it's okay, this is lawful, this is what happens. I guess.
Are you able to just kind of silently feel the physical component of the agitation, of the overwhelm, of the
Yes, in a sort
out
of
of tune energy?
syncopated way. Yeah, so it
Yeah.
does that. The settling is not for long. Like today, there have been a couple of moments of like, oh, but then there's a sort of a grasping, wanting to fix what is happening and make that happen versus just noticing that it's there. Like I want the clarity back, and that wanting is agitating. So
Really good to see.
yeah.
It is agitating. And in a way, you're still sort of on the overwhelmed social tsunami, wanting to fix it. And
Yeah.
that's why I asked if you go to the body and what do you notice? What do you feel? That's where we get settled. That's where we begin to just feel the waves wash up on the shore and break on the rocks or the sand, and then they gently pulled back out to the sea. And just feel the same turbulent system start to settle physically and then emotionally. And then watching out for that mind that grasps, that wants to fix, that wants to change, that has an agenda, that's still part of the overwhelm
Yeah.
attack. Yeah, 4 nights in a row, that would do me in.
Yeah, I'm taking some nights off now. Well, thank you. That's helpful.
It's always helpful to do a little walking too when we feel that kind of impingement of social interaction and overwhelm. And then we come back to our safe space and just a little back and forth walking. If we sit down, we may still feel a little bit jarred and it feels a little uphill to settle. But if we do a little, even 10, 15 minutes walking to and fro and feeling the body just flowing through space, displacing space, and the energy starts to settle more. So we have those postures, and that's what the Buddha advised us to use them. Sitting, standing, walking, lying down. Try them all.
Julia.
Hi.
Hello. Unmute.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, that was my fault.
I wouldn't know. Well, this isn't really to do the talk was awesome. But what made me think of it was kind of Molly's share. I had this experience and I didn't know how to work with it, so like I just didn't work with it and went to sleep. So last week, I saw on the news that people were sitting at my high school and taking pictures of where my K through 12 house used to be, but it was mostly smoke and flames and airplanes dumping red chemical slurry. And it was, I couldn't see the house where I grew up. But they were pretty dramatic looking pictures. And so a few friends, I sent a picture like, this is where I grew up. This is my house. Look at the, and as I did it, I was like, I don't know why I'm sending this picture. Like I couldn't figure out what my motivation was, but I felt this urge to like share with my grown-up friends from my grown-up town, which is like 3 hours away. Like, look, my house is burning down and people are at my high school, like, look at the flames and they're 1,000 yards from my house. And it didn't burn down. But then I was like, why did I do that? And then after I sent the pictures, it was like bedtime. So I was lying in bed and it was like, I was like, I must be having an emotion that was driving that behavior, sharing these photos. Like, otherwise, why would I share this like dramatic thing? And so I was like, what's the emotion? But I couldn't find out. It was like this low level simmer in my body, like when you turn the burner on low, but there was no like specific bubble of feeling coming out. So then I was just like lying there in bed and like I was like, shouldn't I be doing something? Because isn't this a feeling? Like is that weird not to have like a feeling, And then I just felt like this low level, because Stephen was telling Molly like, well, did you go to the body? So I was like feeling in my body, but the feeling wasn't enough to like push it into the wave. And so it never quite like, and then I just fell asleep. So I'm wondering like how to work with, like obviously something drove me to send the pictures that were dramatic to my friends. And then they all wrote back and they were like, that's so terrible. Oh my God, it's horrible. Blah, blah. And then I was like, well, no, it's not terrible. Like it's so, but I sent it for a reason. So I must, anyway, okay. Open to it.
I have one thought too. Will I start or?
Sure.
In the in the early Buddhist teachings, there's many discourses, and there's one in many on mindfulness. But there's one, the Satipatthana Sutta, the establishment of mindfulness, that is particularly well known and particularly comprehensive. And it goes through all these details, the 4 postures that Stephen was talking about: sitting, standing, walking, lying. And many of you know this. And all these details about bodily postures and noticing the different elements, temperature element and movement element and so on. What I mean is it does a lot of details and in regard to the body, and then in regard to feeling tone, pleasant, unpleasant feeling tone, and then in regard to the mind, a mind that is expansive and a mind that is contracted, and a mind that is lustful and a mind that is without lust, and so on, all these details. But there's one line in each of these sections for body, feeling tone, mind, general phenomena. Or she just knows that there is a mind. Enough for clear awareness and remembrance. So what was occurring to me when you were, and that is a legitimate way to practice. It's a really legitimate way to practice, to not know the details, to not get so caught up in, "Oh, what is this emotion? What is that emotion?" But just to know, oh, there's emotion going on. I can feel that low level simmer. I can feel that low level simmer in the mind, body, being. And I can also notice that there's not a precise, it's not showing itself as a precise emotion. Okay, that's how it is. Like, that's actually what's going on. There's a low level simmer and you don't know what it is. That's what's happening. Great. Steve.
I heard an emotion of wanting to connect as the motivation to reach out and share that experience, which might normally be, at least to some degree, a little traumatizing, maybe. And back and forth between defending against the trauma and seeking kindness, seeking affirmation from your friends, from sharing with your friends who did come back to you. And you may not have noticed that pattern, but of course, we all seek connection and we all desire kindness, to receive it, to give it. And, in time, maybe you'll perceive that experience from a kind of, yeah, that was pretty intense. And then you'll understand why you reached out, because I'm hearing you ask, what was the motivation? So I'm just suggesting some possible areas. We all want to connect, we all want to be affirmed. And something like that for me would be a pretty poignant emotional experience. And my tendency would be to defend against the feeling and to seek connection with others, as you did.
Those
No,
are
you're-
both perfect answers, and they address like such different things. Like, one is, my favorite line in the whole sutta is the "wa," or else they're mindful.
Totally.
Yeah, and then also, yeah, like maybe that is why I reached out, was like exchange with friends and seeking. So perfect, both of you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Lovely. I was thinking I forgot to write it down, so I didn't say it about my talk, but your story brings it up. We're so built to co-regulate our emotions. Like, in the context of the Dhamma Vinaya, of the teachings and training, the human connection has been so important through all these thousands of years since the Buddha. That human connection of a teacher and a student, and of people practicing together in silence, but also speaking, co-regulating each other. Doing it together. It's that aspect of Sangha and teacher student. It's been so important. And outside of that, just the family and friends, and the ways that we depend on each other to regulate our emotions when we're not, courage or confidence hasn't happened yet for that. And for me anyway, one of the deepest fears is losing that, wherever it is, that person who I'm feeling dependent on co-regulating with. Like that's a huge fear. So to face that one, whichever moment in life, when you're young, maybe your parents, later on, maybe others, but to face that fear, that's like the dragon in Lord of the Rings. But somehow it can be done. That was another piece of my talk, but thank you for inspiring me to finish that piece. Oh, good. I was hoping you'd ask something, Becca. It's good to see you.
Hello, so good to
Hello.
see you and to be here with everyone. Unfortunately, I'm all mixed up with my time zones, even though I've been here for a few weeks. I feel like I should have it down, but so I missed a good amount of your talk, but I'm just sitting with and reflecting on that piece about courage comes after. And I happen to be reading a book by Mark Nepo at this moment called Finding Inner Courage. And I don't know if anybody is familiar with that, but it's kind of like written in these small sections. And I feel like it just peels back layers and layers of the heart. It's quite beautiful. And I'm currently on a nomadic journey, which I have been for just over a year now. And I can totally relate with courage comes after because it feels like it fits on some level with this other phrase of like, do it afraid, like, the call, and often, the fear can rise because it's change and it's uncertain and it's unknown. And so you do it, and then it's like after, whether it's reflection from others or whether it's the nervous system calms down and you're like, oh, right, that took courage. But really, it's like, oh my God, doesn't feel like courage when
Right.
you're in the midst of that space. And it reminds me of a time when I was on retreat with Stephen and Michelle in British Columbia. And I had a check-in, and Stephen, you said to me something like, are you in confusion? And I was like, I don't even know, And then I think it was like 2 days later that I started to come out of confusion, and I was like, whoa, was I confused? Like sometimes we have no idea even of that mind state. And I feel like that can relate to courage also.
Totally. You nailed it. That was exactly how that line, when I heard it, spoke to me. That in retrospect, like, oh yeah, I guess in a way, in retrospect, it did take some courage to do that, but that was not how I was feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
And also waiting for like clear, calm confidence. That was not working. I had to do it, and then afterwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. So beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for
Thank you.
having this space. I look forward to catching the recording.
You got the whole talk already. You got the.
Perfect.
You got the.
Perfect. Yeah.
Do you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, when you were talking, Becca, I was thinking of a couple of miles from here, near Sandy Beach, are these cliffs we used to jump off of when we were teenagers, 60 to 80 feet high, depending on where you jump from. And it was high enough that sometimes it would rip the seam of my board shorts, upon landing. Or if you didn't have your hands down or up, it could dislocate a shoulder. I was lucky that that didn't happen. But so I was trying to think of all I can remember was fear, looking down in the same way of in surfing big North Shore waves. I just remember fear and the initial paddling and looking down over this water cliff. And all I can remember as you were talking was the feeling of fear. And then the joy, the joy afterwards. And I suppose you could say the Wirya, the courageous energy. And that persevering stage that Jake was talking about, the second stage of that energy arc, is not only going through the challenges we face in opposition and difficulty, but in attachment, so to get overconfident, to feel, yeah, I made that jump okay, I didn't dislocate my shoulder, or I made this drop on a wave much taller than this house, and and the right balance of energy would be kind of to appreciate that energy, to appreciate that, so that's how I'm relating to the discussion of the courage comes after. And it also is related to the co-regulation I'm hearing, because it's when we do something with intention, whether it's to jump into a relationship or jump into the ocean from 80 feet or go down the face of a 20 plus foot wave, it's that relationship kind of reorients ourselves to our bodies and to all of our relationship to nature and to others. And if we identify with it, it can be like as I think Molly was talking about, returning to the social realm and engagement. It can feed our attachment or the ego sense of ourself, and grow that sort of identification, or by the regulation and by the understanding of persevering through the joys and delights without identification, without attachment, then we come out with the balance. We come out with a equanimous sense of being, kind of take it in stride. That's how I relate. That's what came to mind in talking about, as you were talking about, and I was thinking, gee, I couldn't do that jump today.
Rip more than your board shorts.
It would rip a lot more than my board shorts off. Take my skin off.
Lovely. Thank you, Steve.
Annie?
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm now unmuted. Um, this has been very interesting. Thank you, Jake. This has been very interesting. I was born in 1950 and raised with parents who expected me to be a wife and mother. And so everything I've done, and I didn't do that. So everything I've done has taken me moving against the grain of expectations. And I learned how to do it with perseverance. The hardest thing, however, that I ever did took me 11 years to write my dissertation and get my PhD. 11 years. And maybe even longer, I don't know. And it took me 2 years after that to feel that I had actually accomplished it. So there's some huge delay that I just can't appreciate what I've been able to do, given that I was not prepared at all or supported to do any of the things that I've done. And yet I just moved ahead. And I don't know why I finished the damn dissertation, except that I kept saying, I know I can do it and I want to do it. But I really was fighting demons the entire way. And like I said, I don't know why it took me 2 years to actually acknowledge and feel a kind of recognition that I had done this amazing thing. I don't know. Just, what would you like to say to me in that story?
I'll just say one thing, and then maybe Jake. What I heard was there was a second dissertation going on as an undercurrent, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really was. I was working with all the other expectations that.
That's powerful. It's a beautiful experience and a beautiful kind of embryonic evolution.
And it took, and I only now can say it in thinking about your talk, Jake, that it took a lot of courage to keep coming back to it and acknowledging that I had the ability to do it. So, but I just didn't see it. I didn't see it because I was doing all these other things. There was a lot of fear. There was a tremendous amount of fear.
And what the amazing thing for me and myself, and also hearing it in your story, is that even though we couldn't feel that knowing at the time, we can see in retrospect, oh, there was that knowing that I can do this, I need to do this. This is what I must do. On some level, there is that knowing, because like we can see it in retrospect, but in the moment, at the time, what I'm resonating about in your story is that I also feel that way. At the moment, I didn't know clearly. And yes, there was other stuff going on, but for me, but in some ways it just feels like that was the buzzy energy of the fear. Yeah, I was doing stuff with that buzzy energy and figuring stuff out, but in the second dissertation, you and I, it sounds like you and I were facing that fear, persevering through old patterns, intergenerational maybe.
Yeah, and I think part of part of what stood in my way is that I was unwilling to actually experience the fear.
That was, I hesitate to use this in the total past tense. That has been the problem.
Yeah.
For me. Of course, like there's the outer world of people and travels, and but it's all, each one of them is in this moment of seeing, this moment of hearing, this moment of fear, this moment of courage right now washing over us, falling away. Yeah, that's the part I had been having trouble that I'm having slightly less trouble, or more moments of grace with. that feeling of fear. It's kind of what I meant to say in the talk. To appreciate in the talk, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely. Any last questions? Any way that Stephen and I could be of service to you today in your practice?
I would like to thank all the practice leaders who held this Sangha together Sunday to Sunday while Michelle and Jesse are sitting and while I was in Asia. It's very generous and empowering for people to step up and do that. So thank you, those of you who participated in that and kept the Sangha glued together with your generosity and kindness and your words of wisdom. Very grateful. I think that was you, Harry, and William, and Quinn, Sun. I don't know, Sun, you were involved. Or Trey, I'm not sure who all did it, but thank you. Barbara Fisher.
Okay.
Thank you, Kay. Acknowledgement is good. It's an expression of the mudita and metta. Until next Sunday, then. Same time, same place. Harry, I'm always afraid that you're going to fall into the Vallecitos pond. Aren't you?